It's the True Penny Show with your host, James True Penny.
Hello and welcome to the True Penny Show. My name's James True Penny. This is my show, and this is a third crack at the life and times of Stan Hansen. We did try and do this in two goes. For those of you who listened to the last version of this show will have noticed some technical difficulties were ahead, and I apologise for the lack of sound quality we normally provide. And we did lose the back half of the show thanks to a file corruption. I downloaded it 2 or 3 times and it would not save properly the way we wanted it to. Them's the way of things and them's the breaks, as they say. But it gives myself and Mr. Marcus Green of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, another chance to look at the wonderful and glorious Stan the Lariat Hansen. How you doing, Marcus?
Good, man. Always glad to be back. And the conversation about a man that was so nice, we had to do it thrice. So but again, like I said, it's a true legend, and as we talked about before, last of a dying breed. We may have seen shades of Stan Hansen throughout the years, and I'm pretty sure you could make some really quality comparisons, which would be high compliments for some of the performers today. But a rare duplication has not, I think, been truly seen. Not the way that we've come out talking about some of the stuff that we got through in another great playlist curated by you, of course. That the lineage, the amount of absolute aces that he fought not only throughout his entire career, but in the earliest parts of his career, and to really be uh, so relied upon during that time by a certain promoter, it's a rare find.
He absolutely is. And what's a better place to start than the Tokyo Dome? 1998, All Japan Pro Wrestling. 1st of May, we're in the big show. It doesn't get much bigger than this. And it's Kenta Kobashi and Johnny Ace going up against Big Van Vader, or he was known back then, just Vader, with his buddy Stan Hansen, in what would be an absolute killer match, a battle for the ages on this particular show. This was the semi-main event, and it was there to kind of establish Vader as a major threat to the Triple Crown in All Japan Pro Wrestling. And this match certainly did that job. Vader and Stan Hansen, though were unsuccessful in that year's Championship Carnival, not Championship Carnival, Real World Tag League, they did an awful lot to establish Vader as an absolute killer. And this match was there to put him in context with two of New Japan's biggest single stars in Johnny Ace and Kenta Kobashi. Now, obviously, we are not particular fans of John Laurinaitis at this particular podcast for obvious reasons. He's not a nice human being. However, there is no denying the fact he was top gauging in All Japan Pro Wrestling for a very long period of time. And the fact that he's wrestling Vader and Stan Hansen at this particular point shows you how popular he was. This match is pretty intense. And we're getting the full-on Vader here. This is Vader as he had not been for quite some time, having been diluted down to nothingness in the WWF after his run there. This was his rise back to prominence in perhaps the Last Chance Saloon. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
Oh, this was great, and we talked about when we originally did it, obviously the toughness of Vader and kind of some of that lineage. He's one of those also who kind of made certain crossovers in the pop culture, most notably in like the Boy Meets World show and other stuff. So he was definitely big time in that name, and certainly lived up to that. But again, you kind of see that thread that we've seen, throughout a lot of modern wrestling of performers getting to a certain status, uh, and you thinking they're going to be able to maintain that. They go to certain places like a WWE or WWF at the time. It kind of gets, like you said, very severely watered down for whatever final reason, and then they kind of have to return to New Japan where everything is. You can't really go through the paces, if you will, in terms of showing, flexing without really being able to show the muscle because, that style just won't allow it. And if any part of you is not up to snuff, it's going to be shown very early and probably going to get packed up because they appreciate the art form. They appreciate real artists even more. So if you can't really get up to snuff, is going to show. And I think it says a lot about Vader that he went back to Japan to really, at the time he probably didn't necessarily have to. Kind of could have just ridden on kind of old merit, if you will, but he went back there to, face future legends like Kenta Kobashi and I guess at the time very important Johnny Ace to kind of re-solidify himself, and it says a lot because we talked about this also. This was at that point in the career where Stan was kind of using a lot of what he had cultivated as a performer to elevate others.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of gave him the. He was no longer the main event star, that's for sure, though he still had enough momentum and the fans respected him enough for him to be able to put over younger wrestlers, especially someone like Kobashi, who was. Well, Johnny Ace as well. I can't deny that fact. We try and ignore him, but there we go.
Yeah.
But Kobashi was certainly um, the rising star of the company. He was considered the perfect wrestler by all Japan fans. Big enough to have an amazing match with a heavyweight, tough enough to have an amazing match with a brawl like Stan Hansen, but light enough and small enough to go up against a junior heavyweight and make a great match. He was the perfect wrestler. That's what the fans called him. And he's already knocking on the door of Misawa and Kawada, and he's clearly going to be the next generational choice for Baba. And then Vader comes along, he's available, and for your protagonist, you always need an antagonist. Well, there isn't a better antagonist than Big Van Vader when he's on the form, right? So Baba, unlike Vince McMahon, gave him every opportunity to shine in this particular case, and that's what makes the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it ultimately you're relying on, and this is really the difference. You're dependent upon, obviously you appreciate the work and the obviously camaraderie that the performer has with the audience. Um, because you can't really sell somebody unless they click with the audience. But in Japan, it comes down to the wrestling, and we know how much that word is loathed by McMahon. So of course, the importance is, because ultimately everything's just going to show in the ring. And none of these guys have any problem. I mean, these four men could, even Johnny Hayes at this time could likely do it in their sleep. So,
Yeah,
really, really all you're doing is just putting the right, ingredients in the pot and just as the kids say, letting them cook. You know.
yeah, yeah. This is it. It's quite a remarkable match, really, in that sense. Um, and you realise like the genius of Baba for putting Hansen and Vader together when putting two monsters together doesn't necessarily click sometimes. But he knew that Stan would look after Leon, and he did. He made Leon look like a star. He allowed him to be the leader of the team and the dominant force in that particular team, and it set Leon up to have a run at the Triple Crown, which he would win the following year, or that year rather. So yeah, it's also a kind of a testament as to how Baba booked tag team wrestling to show off heavyweight wrestling. The two were related, definitely. There was a line of tag teams that made single stars, but there wasn't any of that Shawn Michaels Mighty Jannetty thing. It was always kind of like they were both great. Like Kobashi and Ace had been tagging together for 6 or 7 years. They both would win the Triple Crown. So it's not one's not mutually exclusive to the other. Whereas today we kind of like we're discussing during World Tag League like Yuto Ice and Oscar, and Yuto Ice seems to be more popular, and he's getting singles opportunities already. When the tag team division should be really about tag team wrestling, and that's the way we perceive it these days. But the way Baba booked this, Hansen is massively important to Vader's push as a singles wrestler because it's the tag team wrestling that establishes him as a brute force.
Yeah, and we as much obviously we staunch supporters of quality female wrestling, obviously. But also, we try to shine so much spotlight and talk about like the quality and the importance of tag team wrestling as well. And to your point, like it kind of comes off like such an unfortunate bastardized thing now because we look at particularly over here, like we look at the tag team as like as a bridge to the heavyweight. situation instead of like a core fundamental foundation on its own in terms of tag team. Because as soon as two people get put together, particularly odd couples, because that's another thing I think that was important. Looking at Stan, like how a few times he got put in some odd couple pairings and it worked. And a lot of that just had to do with just him really knowing his role and kind of letting the other guy thrive when they needed to. And a lot of times the chaos kind of found the middle, with Stan because he could be the guy that kind of held everything up. But with the tag team wrestling, a lot of times over here we just immediately look like who's the Michaels to your point, and who's the genetic. And as soon as people lock those people in, instead of letting these tag teams kind of solidify and getting a good run, we immediately have to focus on when are they going to break off so we can have the Sean do his thing and the other guy do the thing. Like I think about that with one of the tag teams that I like in the Street Profits. Montez always gets lauded for his athleticism and all that, and unfortunately, Angelo Dawkins, who puts in just as much quality work from his own ability, kind of gets left to the wayside because everybody's trying to ask why the rocket hasn't been put on Montez, and I'm sitting a bit like that's cool, but these guys have really solidified a quality record as a tag team, and not for nothing. Like you really want to strap entertainers heads right now when they got guys that really should be stars. They aren't making them
Yeah.
on their own. You want yank somebody from a tag team that's actually has credibility and just so they can kind of get thrown to the wolves, and then people like, oh, they're not booking him right. So it's always something in that regard. But quality tag team wrestling, like you said, like um the guys like in AEW. Why am I missing their names? The Bucks and
FTR.
Thank you, FTR, and,
Yeah.
and people like that. Like they've really solidified themselves in that regard and continue to keep that up. And I've always appreciated guys who really have really just step back and realize when they're just better together. We can make more money, we can have more longevity, even though your career is completely almost dependent on somebody else. It oftentimes works. And to your point with this, a lot of the tag team wrestling aided Stan, I think, in prolonging that career because unfortunately he had to lose one of his best friends along the way, but that was a huge thing, establishing his dominance in that tag reign and eventually obviously winning singles titles. But I think and I don't know if you agree, it felt like Stan got to a point where he kind of was like his own attraction where he did not obviously didn't need to be and have a title to kind of be the thing that everybody kind of focused on.
Yeah, he was Stan Hansen.
Yeah.
You put Stan Hansen on the card, you know what you're getting, don't you? This is the unsinkable battleship, the Lariat. This is the guy who has just like magnetic presence in the wrestling ring. Like this isn't his only trip to the Tokyo Dome. He wrestles the Tokyo Dome a lot, and when All Japan didn't really go to the Dome because Baba didn't like doing the Dome. His theory was you get people to pay more money to see your show at the Budokan instead. I only have to look after 13,000 people, where Mecca's just when he was making 64,000 people, because $1 million gates to the Budokan were a regular occurrence in this period. And it Hansen was of that era and of that aura. It helped that there was less going on in pro wrestling. Even at this point, there was New Japan, there was All Japan. FMW was on its. They would be gone within 2 years. It was, funnily enough, I've just done a podcast with Ruth about Osaka Pro in 2004, and it's like 6 years after this. And the wrestling scene's completely different because of the way things have worked out. But Hansen was kind of like the guy, an uninterrupted run from 83 to 1998, a 15-year run where he was the guy as far as top gauging was concerned in All Japan Pro Wrestling. And he was there or thereabouts in the heavyweight picture or a champion for most of those 15 years. Either a tag team champion, singles champion, always a contender at Championship Carnival, always a contender at Real World Tag League, making finals even late in his career. And that gives him that presence that other wrestlers just didn't have. You know, we've seen some of his temporary tag team partners,
Yeah.
John Norden and guys like that. They were there clearly, you know, to be helped by Hansen. And the next match on our playlist is we're back at Budokan, and it's burning. It's Akiyama and Kobashi going up against Vader and Stan Hansen for the championship for Carnival final in 1998. And though the Tokyo Dome match was serious business, this was even more serious business. This is AJPW in its home office, right? This is the Budokan Hall. This is where business takes place, and the business is to get Burning over as the tag team, and that's all that's going on here. And this is an absolutely killer pro wrestling match. Stan Hansen, Leon White, doing what they do best, which is beat people up.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just watching this exchange between Kobashi and Vader, and he's just chopping Vader. Vader just stops and just whacks him upside the head and drops him cold. And it's like, yeah, this is what it's about. Like,
Yeah,
this is
this
about
is
these guys. Yeah,
this is what All Japan's about. In you look at the number of people who are made Championship Carnival. Dynamite Kid wrote about it in his book, like as in Real World Tag League. Dynamite wrote about it in his book, like it was always Kawada and Misawa versus me and Davey Boy in the final, or it's felt like it every year for like 3 or 4 years. And he said it was always so intense because this is what All Japan's all about. You know, the superiority of their tag team wrestling division because they put the singles guys in top runs for the tag team tights because that's how you make singles guys. That was Baba's thought process. There was no secondary singles title in All Japan Pro Wrestling. There was 2 tag team titles. There was the All Asian Tag Team title and the World Tag Team title, but there was no separate singles title. There is now, there's the Gaora TV Championship, but for such a long time, there's no secondary heavyweight championship in All Japan because they merged all the titles into one to make them mean more. So therefore, your path to the heavyweight championship had to go through the tag team division, and more people were in the tag team division, so therefore there was more names, and therefore it was the bigger tournament. And this is your final in '98. One of the 4 pillars, Misawa, his protege Akiyama, and they're after it. They've got their opportunity. This is the one, and this is just phenomenal pro wrestling in my estimation. It doesn't get much better than this in this era.
yeah, and it's really cool to watch this particular pairing because Vader and Stan really are just the opposite. Just don't move. You really just you chopping at this tree for hours and hours, and it's like it goes to that thing like that saying about it. You don't train the forest if you don't hear did it really fall. And then it's like the Vader and Stan is like these are the trees that you have to get proof, video, photo evidence, because nobody's gonna believe you. Like it's like they don't move and they got this invaders just with these fists, these hammer fists, overhand. Like Kobashi, oh, he's taking the mask off, it's getting brutal. Yeah, it's it's nuts, but you could also tell these guys have really also they've danced before. Because it's
Mm.
like the relentlessness that's being by Stan and Vader. It's interesting. But like you said, this is great. Obviously, we're big on tournaments here, and then I just think tournaments are always great. Um, for the most part, but specifically in wrestling and in tag tournaments specifically. But like you said, having to establish your next big talent through tag wrestling, through serious tag wrestling instead of kind of how we see sometimes. It's like we're gonna put these 2 guys together because we have nothing for them creatively on a solo endeavor instead of,
Yeah.
trying to build these guys up properly through the advent of long term, tag team storytelling. And then now we're just gonna throw them together mixture and just hope to God somebody comes out looking decent. Then we're gonna pick one up like those carnival machines where you get the big scoop of hand and pick it up and hope to God it stays so you can get it. But yeah, this is it's great. It also made for like dream matches you didn't have to ask for.
Yeah.
You know, because you're getting these heavyweights clashing, either teaming up or going against each other by way of the tag team. So you didn't have to beg set up for dream matches because you already got them.
Yeah, this is it. Like, Baba had closed door policy right at this particular point. The only people that got in were people he trusted, people he knew could do the job. So at this particular point, you are absolutely getting the cream of the crop. Baba would not hire you unless he thought you could do the work that required. And the work required hitting people very hard and getting hit very hard. And you have to do that night in, night out, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off for 21 weeks tours of the year. And if you turn up for every tour, you'll get the opportunities because it just will come. And if you're good enough, you get pushed to the top. And that's a pretty simple work ethic and a pretty simple way of looking at pro wrestling. But they're on good money, so they're putting the time and the effort in, And it's amazing to me when you look at Stan Hansen. He does retire a couple of years later, and obviously we're going to discuss that shortly. But he doesn't have the damage that a lot of guys did. He's got bad knees and he has 2 knee operations. Where he drops the weight off his wrestling weight, gets down to a reasonable weight size, and he's had a fairly healthy life since over the last 20 years. Which is remarkable. And I look at Yun Akiyama. Yun Akiyama wrestles the same way now, 27 years later, than he did here. I watched him wrestle at Ultimate Party for DDT. He's not wrestling a step slower than he is here. And I don't understand how that happens. I'll be honest with you.
That was such a perfect thing because that was the next thing I was going to ask you. Like, 'cause we talked about, I mean, we talked about with the legend Akuda,
Yeah.
Akuda, and she had like a couple significant injuries, and thankfully, of course, I always praise Japan for this in general. They always allow like every part of the story to play into the larger tapestry of things. So her
Yeah.
injuries very much played a part into her, that ultimate villain that she became and what her opponents would target and why that became a thing. But I was gonna ask you, like, sturdy is definitely a word I associate with Hanson. Because I don't really remember us really referencing too many injuries, if any, with him.
No, I think he had like a couple of years where he slowed down. But he
Yeah,
had no major periods where he was like, just off of it because he didn't. You can look back, look at how many tournaments we've looked at. I mean, I think it was probably the period when he was talking for WCW about like maybe slowing down a little bit because he had dates in the States. But generally speaking, no, he kind of was. He stayed healthy. He wrestled a style that really shouldn't have been that good for his health.
yeah,
You can't be 320 pounds, 6'4", and like wrestle the way he does and move the way he does and stay healthy. NFL players don't last that long, do they?
yeah. With
And he was,
class.
and he's doing stuff. While it's worked, and obviously we are talking about negotiation between professional wrestlers. Getting run over by Road Warrior Hawk is getting run over by Road Warrior Hawk. That happens, and it hurts because it's Road Warrior Hawk, right?
Yeah,
So you got like he was in a position where he really should not have had a career that lasted as long as he did or been as healthy as he did. He had a purple patch that lasted for 20 years because he was always that good. We have not seen. I wouldn't say his early matches were great, but like from '83 onwards, he really didn't do anything that was awful. And he's wrestling all over the world. The time travel. Imagine spending time between like Georgia, Puerto Rico, and Tokyo. That's insane.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, you can't deny his toughness as a man. Like that foundation
Mm.
for everything. But also, I think between the travel, like that mileage and time, like you said, time frame is insane between those 3 places. But also, like just the and we talk about a lot of wrestlers' body just become a lot of times like just one big callus because of the amount of impact that you're constantly taking. It kind of you get used to it. But I think in Japan, it even more so with that particular style and some of the guys he wrestle, you just can't avoid ultimately getting beat up. I mean,
Mm.
you're getting jabbed in the face, you're getting, hard sharp parts of another person's body just grinded into you. I think so much of that also just became like one big hulking man of a callus in a lot of ways, and it's just somebody like Ric Flair, on the same level, like this guy should not be still going in this way at his age, falling and all this other stuff. I just think a lot of times these people about to just become one big callus, and just looking at it now for what would appear to the novice to be like, oh, these two out of shape guys going against these other guys. I'm like, no, these guys are nimble, and I think a lot
Mm,
of that weight also helped with the amount of impact that they were taking because these were not lackadaisical matches. And I think for Stan, you see in the latter part of his career, and certainly um, when he was helping younger guys, it was about how much he could take, then come
yeah.
back and obviously hit that lariat, which rarely, if ever, anybody kicked out of.
Mm,
And a lot of times it would be in efforts where it looked like he would lose. He would just come out of nowhere, hit that lariat, or he hit a glancing blow and then, come back and hit it clean and then get the win. But a lot of that really was just how much damage he can take, and he could take a lot, which was another problem for opponents. Was like you said, if you can't go at this at a certain angle or find a weak spot, you really just got to tough it through. And a lot of guys just you couldn't out tough Stan, and you can't out tough guys like Vader because they just won't go down.
yeah. The only like chink in Stan's armor, which was a problem for everybody else and not him,
Yeah.
was the fact he had terrible eyesight, absolutely
Oh yeah,
atrocious eyesight.
yeah. I
The
remember you told
legend
me
of his
about that.
eyesight. We never really talked about this in the previous episodes. We probably should mention it. But the fact is, Stan was basically legally blind,
Yeah,
and he's throwing that lariat, and he's kind of squinting at you as you're running towards him, and you're hoping it hits in the right place.
yeah. You mentioned that once. I think you mentioned how somebody was like, um, he had a match with Stan, and he just told him to just stay there because he
Yeah.
saw him or something to that effect. And he was like, because he couldn't see. Yeah, I think we mentioned it. You mentioned it once, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that is terrifying because for the whole match, he's literally mauling you, and now you have to stand there and wait, and with this blind man coming at you full speed with this hammer arm. It's like, oh, that got to be terrifying. You don't know if he's gonna hit you in the head or whatever. That is terrifying.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just mad. This 300-pound guy is like squinting at you as you run across the ring, and you're hoping he hits you in the right place. Yeah, I was Michael Hayes who told that story originally.
Oh yeah,
Who was on the receiving end of it in Georgia on several occasions. We're going to move on now to the next match, which is the 1999 Championship Carnival. We're 1 year later. It's Akiyama and Kobashi again. And this time, well, actually, on this particular trailer, it's the highlights of the entire tournament. We're going to scooch to the end because it's the big final match, which is Kobayashi and Akiyama trying to take the titles again. And this time, Stan Hansen's tagged up with his longtime rival, Akira Tayu. And Tayu and Hansen are about as opposite personalities as you can possibly imagine. Tayu is quiet, he's calm, he's collected. He's probably the least explosive of the four pillars of All Japan, but certainly one of the most talented. Absolutely double tough. Invented some of the most serious moves in the King's Road canon. But he's calm, he's collected, he's always the captain of the ship. He knows what's going on. And Hansen is the opposite. And Hansen still is the powerhouse and is still can't control himself. Even in the opening ceremony of this tournament, he kind of like whips his rope out, and Tayo's just like going, "Calm down, we'll be okay. It's all right. We haven't started yet." And Tayo is exactly what Hansen needs to revitalize himself 20 years into, 30 years into this career in what he knows is probably his last run, right? This is his last World Tag League. And he's got probably the best partner he could possibly have. And it's all about, again, getting over Akiyama and Kobashi as the guys, the next generation, confirming their spot as the heavyweight kings. Because Tayu knows his role in the company. He's one of the four pillars. He's secure in the knowledge that him and Kobashi and Kawada are going to be, you know, at the top of the company for quite some period of time to come. What he doesn't know is Giant Baba will pass away within a year, and he'll end up holding the can with everybody else. At this particular point, we're thinking positive because Baba's still alive and he's still booking the company. And Teiyu and Hansen are having that one last run. And this is a remarkable wrestling match from that point of view, isn't it, Marcus?
Yeah, and then and our first go around, obviously you beautifully talked about like this, because we rarely saw it with Sammy. Obviously, he was very demonstrative both before, during, and after his matches a lot of times. But this really, had an emotional component to it that really played into, what we would see after between the interaction with him, because not only was, like you said, um, this was kind of winding down his career, but he really wanted to do this for this kid, because of, what it was going to mean just not only going forward, but for him specifically. 'Cause like you said, for all
Mm,
the differences, obviously he deeply respected the kid, or he wouldn't have been tagging with him. He certainly would have been trying to win a tournament with him. So, to kind of go that far and really not be able to get across that finish line, it hurt. And we,
yeah,
we, we saw that at the end with everything. And, really was no real losers. I mean, like we said before, uh, in our original recording, like even if you don't listen to us, please go back and watch this playlist. Because
yeah,
really is, it doesn't just inform the story of a legend, but it gives you some really great wrestling, particularly in the tag team style. So, just really kind of seeing this again, obviously he's had some highs and lows and emotional moments of his career, but this is the first time I really feel like we got to really see it fully resonate for and
mm,
around him and in him, after a match, so yeah, it was just again, Japanese wrestling does a great job of just really culminating both the physical and emotional to a real like a kind of breaking point there that really informs the full story, which you appreciate even if the outcome doesn't come out like you wanted to.
yeah. That's it. You know, the winds down and Teiyu and Hansen are dominating. And then Kobashi manages to find an in. And
Yeah,
the in is the knee to the face. It's like the ultimate All Japan move, right? Like it's Jumbo. Is the ghost of Jumbo Saruta comes back to thwart Hansen again. Jumbo's no longer around. He sadly passed away because of cancer at this point. But it's Jumbo's knee that kind of like gets Hansen out of the ring. And then Akiyama lands a series of exploder suplexes on Teiyu.
yeah,
And that's the first pinfall for Akiyama over a fourth pillar. And that's the first time he gets the big victory because, like the previous year, Kobashi gets the win, gets the pinfall. It's Akiyama who gets the pinfall this time. This is graduation day. And then the camera drops back to Hansen and he's crying because he
yeah,
couldn't get there for Teiyu. He couldn't. The guy he's had so many matches with, pardon me, the guy he's had so many matches with, the guy him and Brody, well not him and Brody, but him and all of his partners against the Demon Army with Teiyu and Kawada. They finally get on the same page. They finally get through this tournament. They run roughshod over the rest of the tournament. They get to the final, and it's theirs for the taking against the they're an established team, and Kabashi's a fourth pillar, and they can draw, and they're the guys, right? But we should have this. We are the team. We're so experienced. We've been there. We've done this. We know it, and I can protect you, and we can protect each other. And Hansen just starts crying, and I know it's wrestling, right? But it's real. It's Hansen's last hurrah. This is his last run at the big time. He knows he's not going to be back next year. He knows this is his time, and he hugs Teiyu, and the crowd are going absolutely wild for him because the focus isn't on Akiyama and on Kobashi. It's on Teiyu and Hansen as Hansen pulls Teiyu to his feet, and that's real. That is what makes wrestling so great. We're watching it now as we're like commentating, and Hansen throws his payforks in the air and yells "youth," and the crowd yell back, and it's so beautiful. It really is beautiful. Um,
yeah.
and it makes me. Oh.
Yeah,
there's
I
a
get you.
there's a Instagram account that does wrestling matches that make you feel things, and this is what makes me feel things. Me and you have had this long journey with Stan Hansen over the last 2 months of watching everything from 1973 to this being his last big moment, and he has lots of last big moments, but this is the last of the last big moments, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah, and this is what you want. I mean, obviously he's had a, like I said, a full on career. Like even like you said, if he wasn't mind blowing when he first started out, you could still see just like that Texas tough. You know, like you said, that double toughness that he just displayed early on, and then when he really found his own and really, um, really honed that Lariat, he was unstoppable. But even here, like you said, it really feels like a full culmination. And how else would you want to go out? I mean, obviously we talk about somebody like John Cena here in about a week or so. Um,
Mm,
and it just, like you said, culminating, and I totally understand why it's emotional for you because you a lot of this stuff when it was happening. Um,
yeah.
in time. So, to really see it come to a finish like that with everything that's happened, people that are no longer there, and going out in tears, and then really, how else would you, as a super performer, want to go out by helping somebody get over? And even in defeat with all the emotion, he still goes out trying to beat somebody up. There is no other way for Stan to go. Somebody's literally being awarded, and he hits him over the head. This is Stan Hansen through and through. You can't ask for anything better. The man's gonna go out disgruntled. What more can you ask for? But for a second, because we still gotta obviously close him out fully in the retirement. Also, I think KU will be on that list. Do you have like a list of people that you think would like help the most by Hansen in terms of people he helped build up to be future stars?
um you have to say the four pillars. So Kawada, Teiyu, Misawa, and Kobashi would not have been um, the presence that they were without Hansen. Amori, certainly, because he was a partner of Hansen in his early days, and he became uh, an incredible star. His star kind of got derailed a little bit, but he wouldn't have had that opportunity if it wasn't for Hansen. Um, Certainly, you have to look at Johnny Ace from the point of view of like, you know, Johnny Ace ends up being a front office guy for All Japan and for WWE. Um, and that's part of that Kobashi kind of lineage, right? You know, the tag team partners. He had an exceptional kind of like um, influence in that area, and all of the guys like on that All Japan roster that became the dominance guys for the next 10 years. Takayama is another one who was a guy who comes in from mixed martial arts. He's a shoot fighter, has a run with in All Japan, and he's tagging with Amori, and him and Amori have this killer tag team. Which of course is kind of influenced by Stan and Brody because they're the kind of Japanese equivalent. They're a bit more classically wrestling based, but they're in your face and they're violent and they're dominating, and that's kind of where Stan was with his tag team partners. So it's quite remarkable, really, like the influence he has. Certainly, everything that goes on in All Japan and Noah over the next 20 years, the echoes are there. They're still there. He's still, you know, influential in as far as like his attitude towards pro wrestling and his way of presenting himself is still a massive influence on any wrestler from Texas.
Yeah,
Our guys like Mance Warner and a man called Manders. They understand the Hanson idea of the way they present themselves, like as desperados and outlaws. Hanson was the ultimate outlaw, wasn't he? Let's be honest, he was the guy.
yeah, yeah, and that's that's why I kind of very quickly reference Cena because he's trying to make Saturday night's main event not necessarily about him, but about the future stars that we're gonna get. In which, like I said, a lot of times you see guys kind of go out uh with the verbiage of kind of going out on the mat, on the back, if you will, doing the favors, if you will, for other guys. And I think that's the so great about not just obviously always getting to talk to you in general about wrestling, but just going down this list of names that we've been doing with these shows. Like, this is the mark of a true legend. It's not just about the impact of your individual career, but the impact you've had on other people's careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just about how not just about how great you were, but so and the names that we've talked about, both male and female, I think they fit that criteria to a T and certainly stand, in that regard. The fact that he can make, like you said, the four pillars of a company and future, legends that have been obviously talked about throughout the True Penny lineage of shows is, it says a lot, So, Stan's work, I think, has, been well done. And the fact that, like you said, even with his style and everything he went through, that likely should have shortened him in a lot of ways, for him to go up until the point that we're going to talk to the 2000s from where he came from and the territories that he
Yeah.
was in with the crazy travel. But you said what? Mexico, Japan, and Wales, Florida,
Puerto
Texas.
Rico, Florida,
Oh,
Georgia,
yeah,
WWE,
that
Canada.
that's yeah, that's insane. That's literally all over the place. Those flights, are their
Yeah.
own type of heft on the body. So that's insane. But like you said, he showed up. He was relied upon to show up like that, and that's why so much success was had in those domes. So
Yeah.
you got to there's so much credibility and quality in terms of just talking about what he did with as much as he did. So once we get to this last mark, everything that he did was well earned, and even in performance we're going to talk about, he may be slower, but he is by no means any less meaner.
Oh no, here we are. It's 2000. Sadly, Giant Baba is no longer with us. The great migration has occurred. Misawa, Kobashi, the rest of the four pillars have all gone off to form Noah. And Mama Motoko Baba is in a hole. The biggest hole you have ever been in. And Kawada is the only one of the four pillars left. He's booking the company and he's done. He's does not want the stress. He can't do the things he wants to do. So they have to pull something out the bag to make this work. And they end up doing the thing, despite the fact that Mitoko Baba said she would always do the thing that Giant Baba wanted done. Baba always said he would never hire Tenryu back. But there we are, Genichiro Tenryu's back in town. Like the all-time All Japan draw. First time back after 10 years, after leaving All Japan to form Secret World Sports. And here is another guy that Hansen got over. When Tenryu turned heel on Saruta because he hated Saruta that much, that I turned to be his tag team partner was the other guy who hates Saruta just as much in Stan Hansen. And so here we are, 10 years down. The Tenryu revolution is still ongoing, but Stan Hansen is forever. And one last showdown in All Japan Pro Wrestling by two of the legends of this particular era. And it starts with Stan whipping the rope into the crowd like he doesn't care, because he doesn't. And Tenryu landing Suicida on Stan
Yeah,
Hansen. It's like,
time I think I've
here's a
seen that.
270-pound guy flying through the ropes onto a 300-pound guy. Both of them are old enough to know better. But Tenryu was just getting started on his career of advanced maneuvers for a man of his age. 43-year-old and doing top rope hurricane ranas. He started doing that in 2000 because
Oh
got to
man,
change the game.
oh man, that's such a great way to respectfully say that. Elevated maneuvers for a man of his age. Yeah, but and to be fair, going through this list, that's probably the ideal way to start out with Hanson. It's like that. If you really wanna say you wanna get ahead, which I don't know if you ever really ahead with Hanson, because as soon as he gets to his feet, of course he's using his rope. Of course he's throwing you into the ring post. the match ain't officially started yet. That's a dangerous place to be with a man like Stan Hansen. Um, but yeah, like I said, maybe slower, but by no means less tough. And like you said, and I don't know if we talked about this, the first time about I guess, like you said, Tenryu wasn't supposed to come back. I'm guessing when he left, that whole going off and starting your own thing kind of didn't sit well with Mr. Baba.
Oh, no, 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 no. That was the ultimate crime, setting up in competition against All Japan Pro Wrestling and taking the King's Road style elsewhere. God, no. The only
Yeah.
person who was even more disliked than Tenru was Otani, because he considered, not Otani, Atsushi Onita, because he considered FMW garbage wrestling. He hated deathmatch wrestling. He
Mm.
hated Tenru for starting SWS and WAR, but equally he respected him because he did what they called it Tenru Kings Road style. So it was kind of the same style that Baba had, and they developed it along those lines. So at least he respected that, but he hated Onita because Onita created what he called garbage wrestling, which was deathmatch wrestling. But if you look at FMW, the core basis of it is Kings Road style wrestling. It's that style of storytelling of you've got to have a bigger maneuver. If you can't beat the guy with your main maneuver, you've got to string a bunch of maneuvers together, and it's how many maneuvers you're going to get together to get the thing done, right? Even without the yes, it was exploding barbed wire and it was all of the Windows trappings, but you didn't really need it because it's the same storytelling style as this, right? There was just added jeopardy. There was going to be an explosion in 15 minutes time, or if you touch the barbed wire, it would electrocute you, which is an extra wrinkle. But the actual story isn't much different from what's going on in FMW. Sorry, from All Japan. But it's certainly, yes, going and starting your own thing was a serious no-no in Baba's world. So when Tenru went off to be an even bigger star, it has to be said, in SWS and in War, because he was running the show, so obviously he was going to be the bigger star. um, it was did not set well with Baba now. But equally, Baba's no longer here, and Motoko Baba and Kawada have got to pull a hat out of the bag because down the road there's Kobashi and Misawa and Akiyama and Teiyu, and they're running the show and they are killing it. And within the first 5 years, they're going to go from scratch to the Tokyo Dome. And All Japan has to keep up. And how do you keep up? Well, you do the things you say you never would do because, ideology goes out the window when you're trying to make a living. Yeah.
Yeah. Business. Yeah, business is business. So how much longer did I guess that relationship be maintained even after Hanson went Tenryu as things went on, I guess, after this.
It was another couple of years. Tenru, he did SWS co-promoting with the WWE, and it was successful. And then they lost their sponsorship, which was an industrial lens company of all people. So he started War after that, but War was starting to kind of wound down by 97, 98. And he started wrestling for New Japan because he obviously had a big bunch of dream matches in New Japan. And then he did the same thing in All Japan. He went on to be Triple Crown champion. And then by that point, Kawada just said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just want to be a wrestler. So Motoko Baba hired Kieji Muto, the great Muto, to come in as top star and booker. And then Tenru went back to being a freelancer and started Tenru Project, where he found wrestlers like Tomohiro Ishii. So he was pretty successful after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He did all right for himself, did Tenru. And but he was wrestling at this level. He's Tenru was 20 years in at this point, or 15 years in at this point as a main event player. And you watch those matches from 2002 with Muto. Oh, they're glorious. It's like, how did this old man pull this off? Just how? How is it physically possible to do the things that he's doing after the career he's had? And Tenru only retired from wrestling promoting this year. He had his last promotion this year. And it's just, yeah, you look at these matches and how stiff they are, and you just ask your question: is it just because, like you said, they're just one massive walking callus? They just don't feel it anymore.
Yeah, and that's the one note about this. This is like one of the first times, like even with everything we saw him go through in his matches throughout this epic playlist, this is the first time where it felt like for Stan at this age, this stage in his career, the pain was like the third person in the match.
Yeah,
You could see it; it was riddled all over him. It just, you go that long, you just can't escape it. Also, Father Time is undefeated. And obviously, you got Tim Ryu literally defining the concept of you only as old as you feel, as he's con- continuously going to this top rope and dropping these reverse falling elbows, um, which is insane. But yeah, they ended up working. And this is after him taking that lariat.
yeah,
Which like I said again, this years prior, even if he didn't hit it flush, it was enough to allow him to hit it clean again and he get the win, but not here. So
no.
yeah, but this was a yeah, just get your ice ready type of match. You gonna find that there was nothing. There was no holes here, man. We gonna run into each other and knock each other upside the head until somebody, lays down for that suntan. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and this is
you know,
this
they,
is and this is Stan in the same mode. He has to prepare Tenryu for the heavyweight championship run, right? That's his job here. Is Tenryu's got to look like a star, and he does. Tenryu does look like a star. Tenryu is a star. There is very few pro wrestlers of this era in Japan who just looked and walked the walk and talked the talk like Tenryu did.
yeah,
Um, but Hansen was one of those guys, and the fact that these two, and they're not selling much.
exactly. Like I said, no holes, no holes
No,
here.
it's just no. Chin locks ain't happening here. We're not off for submissions. We're off to someone drops, and that's the whole point. And yeah, it's very indicative of its time in Japanese wrestling. You don't get matches like this anymore because this style is so abrasive. There's few guys who can do it. I would guess probably the guys who can do it now: Suji, Gabe Kidd. Um, who are kind of built on this, Tai Chi even, but Tai Chi comes from this environment. He was an All Japan guy in this era. Tai Chi would have just joined dojo in All Japan 2 years after this. So yeah, it's it's um, it's a remarkable piece of tape, to be honest with you, to watch it now and you realize like that was 25 years ago, and Stan's been retired for 25 years and in his like 70s and a nice gentleman who lives in Borger, Texas. He isn't anything like when you watch him in shoot videos. He isn't anything like the character of the Lariat at all. But his work ethic and the sacrifices he makes for All Japan Pro Wrestling in this era, when he knows that the guys coming after him don't have what it takes, don't have the opportunities that he had because Baba's no longer there, and he has to do it for Baba, even though Baba's not there, and he has to do it for Kawada, and he has to do it for the guys, right? So he does it for the crew coming up, and it's a remarkable effort, absolutely remarkable effort, and a remarkable match, even from Tenryu's point of view, who is an honorary old cuss, and this absolutely works in his favor, this match, and gets him over
Yeah,
like gangbusters for that Triple Crown Championship run.
absolutely. And like you said, it's incredible. Like that, I was kind of taken aback by. Like he's beginning to ramp up these more out of pocket maneuvers at his age. At that particular stage, which is insane. But like I said, the way he looked at it in this match, you're only as old as you feel. And if
Yeah,
your body
exactly.
can show up where your mind can, get creative, that's the perfect point. So like I said, it was enough to hold back the lariat. So, it says a lot. And again, to another one of your points, like it's just cool to see, like you said, that Stan is really nothing like that character, but again, it shows that he knew, what it took to succeed, and they really, sold it well, and obviously it was extremely successful. And just in general, you just love to see guys like that not only still around, but in fair health.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we've seen the alternative to that, and it's just not going as well for a lot of other guys. So it's just really cool. Like you said, he's just a nice, you know, guy in Texas, and he telling proverbial old war stories. And
absolutely.
with a great career to stand on.
Exactly. So we've been at this for a couple of months, Marcus. What's your final thoughts on Stan the Lariat Hansen?
No, just another great um, chapter in this book of legends to icons that we've been putting together. Stan is another one of those pillars, and he really feels like to take a moniker from somebody who really doesn't probably deserve it at this point. Stan feels like the last real man, if you will, uh,
Yeah,
in his era. Just like you said, Texas tough, double tough. Anything you'll find a tough Stan was, and really, feel like the last of a line of guys that just came out there, no nonsense. I'm winning, whether whether I'm losing or not. I'm winning type of mentality. And
mm,
yeah, like I said, you really define. I think define a proper legend by not only having a career that's worth standing on, but a career that's helped others be able to stand on uh great foundations as well. Like you said, he made the four pillars in a lot of ways of that particular company, that particular time, as well as gave a lot of guys some really great moments, elevated them in times because I think Stan was just such a great agitator. He really elevated guys. Just looking at that match he had with Cologne,
mm.
comes to my mind. It was insane. So yeah, Stan is just really one of those guys that you just look at and be like, that's somebody you can model your career after if you can actually really call yourself tough because you reference guys like Mance Warner and others, and I think about somebody like ECE who's just a guy who doesn't really sell pain so much as he winces and just keeps going.
Yeah.
You talk about somebody that's absolutely tough that you can't knock down, immovable object. You talking about somebody like Tomohiro Ishii, and I think
Yeah.
he's of that ilk. So you
Yes.
know, Stan Hansen is somebody who was created an ilk that a lot of guys would I'm sure be honored to be in. So yeah, like I said, I just think he's another great nod on our expanding Mount Rushmore of this true legends in this business, and I look forward to us adding somebody to that particular list. You know,
Absolutely. We will be back with the Life and Time series because it's become such a fun series to do. And our most popular show on YouTube this year. I will also say it was the
nice.
second episode of the Stan Hansen series. So thank you very much for joining me, Marcus. I'm glad you've enjoyed this journey. Where can we find you on the internet?
Always a pleasure. You can find me on Twitter at Paradox Kid. That's PARADOXKID. Always down to chat with sane individuals.
There you go. Find a couple of them on Twitter. You can find me at Sheriff Lone Star on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on Mastodon, as well as PixelFed. I'm Sheriff Lone Star TX on Instagram. You can find the show Troopany Show on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on Instagram as Troopany Show. We will be back next week. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.